just this and almost there. There we go. All right. I think we got it. Good morning from San Antonio, Texas, says William Pittman. Spring forward was good for something, and I can watch this live. Well, there you go. Let's see here. Okay. Good morning from Pennsylvania. Today I'm using a blood rack Medusa and bits from the Bliss Barb Archers to make an homage to the old Decala figure. I don't know what any of those words mean, but I appreciate it, Brian Griffith. I'm assuming Bliss Barb Archers is probably Slanesh, if I had to guess. I could be wrong, but yeah. Got VJ Morph here in the house, Feisty Crabman. Let me see here. Good morning from Kansas City. We're in our third spring. Well, that's nice. Yeah, it's not too bad today. Going to be maybe low 50s for a high today, which would be lovely. Got Black Roses here. Peter Stockdale. Nice. Morning from cloudy Ontario. The Wildwoods of Ontario. Two different Ontarios. Melbourne. First time being able to watch live instead of after the fact. Nice. Absolutely. Thanks for coming by. Made it from the UK just in the nick of time. Nice. Hello from Michigan. Northern Michigan. Let's see here. Wait, we're an hour early? I assume daylight savings time is kicking in. Yeah, over here in the States, we, sometime in the early 2000s, decided to move daylight savings for reasons. I don't understand it. Yeah, so we're off, time-wise, we're off from the rest of the world for a couple of weeks. I mean, we're off from the rest of the world in a lot of different reasons, but daylight savings is one of them. Good afternoon from Southampton, UK, getting ready to print up some more models today. And then this event popped up. Marvelous. Absolutely. Greetings from Gothenburg, fiddling with some Atlantis miniatures wood elves. Nice. Greetings from Finland, where I'm running away from having to do my thesis. I'm fine with that. That's, you know, you want to do it eventually, but yeah. Hello from Northern Illinois. Great preview yesterday. Oh, the GW one. Yeah, I missed a lot of it. It was fine, though. The new Necromunda things were pretty cool, I thought. Let me see. Cleaning up 10mm resin knights. Nice. Don't forget, y'all, to pick up your issue of White Dwarf 462 with free Warhammer PC games for Steam. Oh, yeah, I heard about that. Yeah. Morning from Denver. Trying my hardest not to buy a 3D printer today. Yeah. Good morning from Hudson, Illinois. I just downloaded my first 3D file onto Chitubox. From what I understand, I'm going to have to learn how to say that last night for my Elegoo Mars Pro 2. Nice. Good evening, everyone. And Uncle Adam, sorry I missed the irregulars last night. Was feeling unwell and needed to get some rest. Absolutely. Not a problem. Hope you're feeling better. Lanta checking in. First time watching live. YouTube videos have been invaluable so far to my girlfriend and I who just started in the hobby. Well, good to hear it. Absolutely. I'm glad that the both of you are getting into it. And welcome. Jesse Daniels saying, morning from Milwaukee land. Let me see here. What else have we got? It's always fascinating that I always see people from all over the earth. Yeah, no, same here. It's. I tell people this like in the classes that I was teaching, you know, maybe 3-4 years ago at conventions about how to get into YouTube and stuff like that. And about 10 years ago, maybe it's more like 15 now because of how long ago. But about, let's say, 15 years ago, there pretty much was not a broadcaster on Earth, video broadcaster, any of the big, you know, channels in the United States or in any other country that could broadcast all over the world for basically anything. There was just nothing that would, I mean, there were ways that you could get repeated on certain places and maybe, you know, like that, and super huge events sometimes, but there was no, if you just were like, hey, let's do a live broadcast that anybody in the world can see, there were definitely limits. And now I'm doing it here on my dining room table with, frankly, a slightly aging PC. And let's see here. And I have a Space Marine doll that, it was right nearby. That helps. I have a little dumpster fire. That's just, those things aren't required. Don't get me wrong. It's just that, it's really simple. So, good morning, Uncle Adam. You are adding some pleasure while I work my taxes. Oh, yeah, no, that's... We got our taxes... Well, we got our federal taxes bumped back to... Instead of the normal April 15th, it's now March 17th, I believe. But I don't think the state taxes have, so that's kind of an interesting thing. So, yeah. Came home yesterday and heard bad things from the attic. Animal control person found it to be a squirrel, at least. Like a squirrel, at least? Like at least one squirrel? Or it's at least a squirrel? Maybe something, I don't know. We had raccoons once in the ceiling. Not here, but at the place we lived previously, there were raccoons. They're at least a squirrel. Yeah. Taught my son to use an airbrush last night on his flesh tears. Nice. Good morning from Niagara Falls, Canada. Moon landing was probably the first worldwide broadcast. Yeah. But I mean, it wasn't like a single, like people had to repeat it. You know what I mean? Like NBC, let's say for an example, couldn't make it so that went everywhere. They had to other channels in other countries had to basically pick up their thing and you know what I mean? So it was, there was not a way for a single entity to broadcast without help all over the place. Hello from Scotland, Uncle Adam. Well, hello. Assembling some figures for Warcry. I never saw myself getting into this game until I watched your videos. Now 2 of my kids are all in as well. Nice, Iowa Grognard. Yeah, I think it's a really good game, and I'm pretty skirmish focused anyway these days. I'm just not particularly into army games, just a personal preference. I like to be able to paint a little bit of this and a little bit of that and a little bit of this, and I'm not interested in doing the rest of it. So, like a big army I'm not as much interested in. But skirmish stuff is really scratching the itch, and Warcry I'm really having a good time with, definitely. Let's see. Welcome to Satellite Chat. How you doing? Moderator Matthew Sears here in the chat. Squirrels in the attic suck. Our old rental house had squirrels, possibly raccoons, definitely feral cats at times. Possibly dogs, maybe wolves, could be gorillas. I guess technically you go from wolf to chimpanzee and then eventually to gorilla. That's probably where it goes. I need airbrush parts this year, so I have to ignore the new releases. Can't wait. Can't want what you don't know about. That's a good point. That's a good point. Can raccoons in ceilings make spooky noises? Yes. Yeah. I mean, raccoons can make spooky noises because when they sort of chatter to each other, that can be spooky, especially when it's 2 o'clock in the morning and you were asleep. That was a bit spooky. Get possums in our roof space. Oh. Alternative Oats. Does this community have a Discord? There is Discord, but it's for the Uncle Adam's Irregulars. So I have a Patreon and a button for it. Push. There you go. So I have a Patreon, and there's 3 different tiers, and at the $4 tier, which is the most expensive tier, the fanciest, is the Uncle Adam's Irregulars, and then there's a Discord for the folks that are in that, and I also do a live show every month, just kind of for them, which actually was yesterday, now that you mention it, here on YouTube, and and it helps to support the channel and all that kind of stuff, and that's where the Patreon is. I don't have a public Patreon because then that's just another thing I've got to do all the admin for, and watch out for problems, kind of like you do with Facebook all the time. So but that's where that's at. So patreon.com/tabletopminions if you're interested. But that's the Discord. Good morning from Nixa, Missouri. Is that what MO is? Missouri? Sometimes I remember that stuff. No, is that Montana? No. What's MO? Missouri? Okay. Anyway, Warcry or Kill Team? I mean, it's a personal preference thing. Kind of depends on what you like for the models. I would say that Warcry's got the better narrative campaign system, whereas Kill Team, if you like shooting things and hiding in cover more, then Kill Team is probably your jam. Or if you like sci-fi stuff, there's that too. Obviously, that's a big differentiator. It's been great getting friends and family into Frostgrave. It's definitely a big reason to grab a resin printer. That bestiary is pretty big. Yeah, no, that's very true. That's a very good point. Going for my first dose of vaccine after this today. I'm a little nervous, I'll be honest. Well, yeah, that's good to hear, though. I'm going to say I want primates in the ceiling least of all, and that's true. I can understand that. Foxes make significantly spookier sounds than raccoons. A lot of wailing from foxes. That's true. Yeah. That's true. We have flying squirrels in our roof. They skitter up the roof every night and go out partying, or whatever it is they do. Yeah. Well, they're what is that? Nocturnal, I think, probably. I'm no squirrel scientist, but I think they're nocturnal. Mo is from Oklahoma. Got it. It's good to hear. Employment has slowly been getting gainful, so I may be able to rejoin the ranks of the irregulars soon. Absolutely. And again, it's, I always appreciate, obviously, the support and stuff like that, but it's, I understand, and it's, I appreciate, all kinds of different things. It's like, your life changes and this and that and everything, so yeah, don't worry about that. Good morning from Delaware, lurking while at work. Always a good idea. Hello from Italy, doing some file work for my Middle-earth strategy battle game, is I believe what MESBG stands for. I'm pretty sure it's Middle-earth strategy battle game, right? Rohan Force, well that makes sense, sure, nice. And by file work, you mean you're filing documents and stuff like that to get the horses all registered and stuff like? No, I'm assuming you're filing with a file, which is, going to make sense. Frogs in distress make very spooky noises. Cats in distress make spooky noises too. But yeah, coyotes can also make unsettling noises. Also true. My wife got her shot the other week, and then she just had a sore arm. Yeah, my mom's got both of her shots now, and they've both been fine. So I'm very glad, because I was concerned that she was going to be ill with it, or she was like, yeah, my arm hurt a bit, but yeah, that's when you get a normal flu shot. Like I get a normal flu shot every year, and yeah, usually later on in the day, you're like, why does my? Oh, yeah, that's right, I got a shot, and but it's not too bad. Let's see. Hey, from Nebraska. It's our one nice day of the spring. I mean, it's barely spring yet, is it? Did it technically turn into spring? It might have. Yeah, it's like, is that the 20th that it does that? I don't know. I should probably look. Good morning from Oklahoma. How you doing, Fred? Coyotes in the attic would be a problem. Probably so, yeah. They'd just be clunking around up there. Ever heard of Bobcat? It's like a howling demon. Not in person, no. I think I heard one once on YouTube, though, or TV or something like that. Well, yeah, ghosts make the spookiest noises, of course. I mean, that makes sense. And also owls. Yeah, there's also spooky. I mean, that's why they put that stuff on Halloween decorations, you know what I mean? Ghosts, owls, bobcats, foxes. Hello from Indiana, impatiently waiting for my archvillain rats, Skaven Countess models to print so I can prime them this afternoon. Yeah, I have not painted any archvillain stuff yet, but my friend Vince Venturella, who you may know from YouTube, he did just recently paint a cool demon from archvillain, and it was actually the video that I did recently about how Patreon is, in my opinion, to some degree, kind of giving Kickstarter a bit of a run for its money as far as the 3D printing folks are concerned. The thumbnail in that video is an arch-villain demon, and it's the same one that Vince just recently painted, so that was fun. Yeah, they're very cool stuff. Very, very cool stuff. The thumbnail in today's video, I forget where these came from. I mean, I got them from My Mini Factory, but I forget the name of the sculptor, and I should probably look it up, but I forgot to do so. But yeah, these are from My Mini Factory. Those are both resin prints. They were printed by my friend Matt from Game 4. If you listen to us on the Game 4 podcast, which you ought to if you're into tabletop gaming. But yeah, he's got a Elegoo Saturn, which is... It's the printer I think I kind of want. And now the downside is you can't get it right now because... The human garbage that is known as scalpers, who buy up all the PlayStation 5s and they've been buying up all the Elegoo Saturns as soon as they land on Amazon, and then reselling them as collectibles. It literally says that on Amazon. Oh yeah, this is a collectible, and it's $800 now instead of $500. So, obviously people suck, but I also blame Amazon. Like, 3D printers aren't collectibles. You know that this is, anyway. You know that basically what you're doing is you're reaping the benefit of selling a product twice. And anyway, whatever. So yeah, I'm waiting, frankly, for that because I'm very interested in some sort of. I'm interested in the Elegoo Saturn. It's a resin printer. It's got a 4K screen. It's monochrome, which makes it print faster. From what I understand, I don't quite understand that yet, but that's what I've been hearing. And it's got a bigger build area, with a place where you can put the printing stuff in there. Zombies are also disconcerting to hear in the attic. That's true. That's a good point. Equinox was yesterday, so it's technically spring. That's good. Koalas make a very heinous grunt noise, not very cuddly. One of our girl cats, she's a bit of a grunter sometimes too when you're petting her. Well, if you're giving her like really good scratches, she'll grunt a bit. It's funny. Teenagers in the basement are the worst. Way worse than raccoons. They do have opposable thumbs, those teenagers. That's true. I've had my eye on Archvillain sculpts. They do look so detailed. They are very detailed, yes. I missed all of the GW announcements yesterday. Saw some new Redemption for Necromunda. Did they show any other new Necromunda stuff? I don't know if they did anything else other than the Redemptionists. Yeah. Good morning from Livonia. Painting on my 9th kill team since your team's under $50 video, and now eyeballing the Warcry vids. Well, yeah, I mean, like, that's the thing. That's what's so cool about it, is that, like, you can do 9 armies because it's not that expensive, it's not that much time, it's not that much space to take up. Like, at this point, for kill team, I think I have 7 or 8 painted armies. I think so. It's at least 7, but potentially 8. And for Warcry right now, I have 4 or 5. Skaven, Nurgle, Night Haunts. What's the other one? Stormcast, Stormbros. That's at least 4, but I thought I had a 5th. But I could be. It's hard to keep track. So yeah. My favorite part of resin printing has to be able to directly support small sculptors that I love the style of. Oh yeah, no, definitely. Like small sculptors, and a lot of them are not necessarily as small as they used to be anymore either, but these sculptors that are doing the Patreon thing, they've found themselves a great business model. I mean, it's a really spectacular business model, because sculptors for years and years and years have basically had to kind of scratch around to try to find, gigs, jobs, from the game companies, and then you're dealing with an art director who's like, hey, can you make the holster a little bit more, rustic? And you're like, I don't even know what that means, dude. And I've been an art director before, so I know that we can be, a pain in the butt. And so, now they don't have to work with these companies. They just make the stuff that they like to make, and then the people who support them are like, hooray, because they like their style, they like the stuff that they do, and then they get 10 to 15 to maybe 20 different sculpts every month, and these guys are making, a decent wage and enjoying and not having to work with these other people. And I do wonder how the actual gaming industry, tabletop gaming industry, I wonder what they're doing right now to try to find sculptors, because I tried to reach out to like 3 or 4 different sculptors earlier in 2020 for a project that I was considering, and every one of them I talked to was like, nah, I don't have any time, I'm not doing any commissions. You know what I mean? And I was like prepared to pay. I wasn't like, listen, what can I get for $5? I was like, look, what I was talking about, I would like to pay you to do this. I was leading with, this is not for exposure or any kind of dumb junk like that. I want to pay you. And like I said, at least 3 of them were like, I'm way too busy with my Patreon. So, it's working out good there. Let me see. We have a sunshine in Scotland, so rain, so different. Well, that's fun. Let's see here. Spot on, though. As an entertainment industry worker, there is nothing I hate more than scalpers. Yeah, I can understand that. I have 14 kill teams. It's your fault, Uncle Adam. I mean, is it my fault or is it my... What's the opposite of fault? It's... I'm not working on that. I have too many kill teams, said no gamer ever. Well, I mean, you could probably have too many. Like, once you've got 3 of every different faction, you may start to run into a storage problem or whatever, but yeah. Koalas would make a great Blood Bowl team. They don't like to follow instructions. So, yeah. Annie Norman talks about sculptors a bit. It is interesting to hear. Oh, yeah. I mean, so Annie Norman is from Bad Squiddo Games. From what I understand, though, the majority of the stuff that she works with is like hand sculptors, like people who are still using like green stuff and things like that. I'm talking about the digital sculptors. The digital sculptors are basically all off making STLs for Patreon and things like that so that they can do that. But yeah, you're right. The hand sculptors, for people that are still looking for that, and I know a lot of her stuff. I don't know if all of her stuff is hand sculpted, but I know that that's probably at least a majority of the things on her store over Bad Squiddo are probably hand sculpted, so that's cool. Would koalas in the attic be better or worse than raccoons? It's a good question. I think raccoons would be worse. They seem like they're more mischievous. Koalas seem more sleepy. Good morning from Cleveland. How loud are resin printers? Been thinking about a Mars 2 Pro, but worried about the noise when running it overnight. I don't believe that they're very noisy. I believe, and I could be wrong on this, so those of you out there who've got resin printers, because I don't have one yet, like I said, still definitely thinking about it. I have one in mind, if I can ever get it. But FDM printers are probably considerably louder because there's just so many more moving parts. With a resin printer, there's literally like kind of only pretty much one moving part, and it's the part that goes down into the resin, and it's got the plate, and then there's glass underneath there. Well, that's not glass. It's some sort of film, FEP film. And then there's like a little TV screen, an LCD screen. And it shows each slice, and the UV light comes through there, and then this thing goes up and then kind of goes back down again. So it's just doing this over and over, and then slowly over time it just keeps doing this until it pulls this object upside down out of the resin. So I don't think they're very loud. Whereas like an FDM printer, a filament printer with the spool and all that stuff, it's got usually at least 2 axes, or maybe 3. Yeah, I guess it would be 3, because it can do X, Y, and Z. And so those are all handled. Yeah, so that's a lot noisier. It's constantly like moving around and, all that goop. So problem is when you have over 9 kill teams, but they're all Space Marines. Well, yeah, I could see that too. Hey, Uncle Adam Lurker here. I just want to say thank you for all you do. I have a condition that leaves me with bad days, but your videos really help me get by. Thank you so much. Well, absolutely, Keita. I'm glad to hear it helps. I mean, that always is something that's it's something you hope for. The junk that you put out into the internet helps somebody. So I appreciate it. Thank you. I got to play 4 games of Gaslands last weekend with my brother-in-law. Great close races. Lost 3 of 4, but there was much carnage and fun anyway. I mean, that's the most important thing, is the fun. Raccoons for the win. This is the diabolical bit. An Underworld's warband can be expanded into a Warcry warband, which can then be added to start collecting to get a great Age of Sigmar army. I mean, that's the business plan. And I gotta be honest, to some degree I appreciate it, and it's not because I'm a businessman, because Lord knows I'm not particularly a businessman, but it would be a little worse if you were like, hey, look, there's this really cool game. And you're like, oh, that's cool. These guys are really neat. Can I use them in this other game? And they were like, no. No. I mean, it helps, obviously, to help draw people towards the bigger army game and all that kind of stuff. But there's no reason also why the company couldn't just be like, no, these aren't compatible parts. And you're like, but they're the same size, and these guys are corn and those guys are corn. Why can't I just use these and those? We haven't made stats for those guys, so you can't use them in the game. So it's nice, but it's not only is it to help drive you towards getting into Age of Sigmar to some degree, but it also helps. It's a value proposition. Like, look, you bought these guys for Underworlds, but you can also use them in Warcry if you want to, or you can use them in Age of Sigmar. Like you're not limiting yourself, which is sort of nice. I mean, it's the same idea to some degree with Kill Team and 40K. There's no 40K equivalent to Warhammer Underworlds. So that's something. I mean, I feel like the reason they did it fantasy versus sci-fi, Warhammer Underworlds, is just because it was going to be an easier kind of pull people from Underworlds to Warcry, eventually even into Age of Sigmar. Pulling people into 40K is slightly harder and also maybe not quite as necessary because it's a generally kind of still to this day even a bit more of a popular game than say like the Age of Sigmar stuff. Although the Age of Sigmar stuff is doing gangbusters. So yeah. J Solo Arts says they are silent. Main problem is odor and cleanup. Yeah, and the odor thing I'm trying to figure out. For one thing, I know I'll be using water washable resin. The prints that I've been getting from my friend Matt from Game4, aka also known as Gaming Matter, Mattr, no E. If you go to gamingmatter.com, he's kind of doing a little print service as well. So he's had lots of people reach out and say, hey, I have these STLs, I need to get this printed, that kind of thing. So he does that. And he's been doing all this stuff in water washable resin, and I've been real happy with it. So that's my plan, is to do that. But then I'm also trying to figure out, I was looking on Amazon, I found it's like a tabletop greenhouse that might be big enough to fit the printer inside. It's just basically kind of like a little house-shaped kind of frame, and then there's like a plastic vinyl see-through thing that you can put over it. If I cut a hole in it and put a hose in it and maybe a fan or something and blow it out the basement window, which would be right by where I plan on hopefully keeping that printer, then that might help just to get rid of the odor. But he has said that the water washable odor, or the water washable resin, is less stinky than the stuff that you have to use isopropyl alcohol to clean, or to. So yeah. Duncan says smell depends on resin type. See, that's a shorter way of saying what I just said. Yeah. Put my printer in a Rubbermaid tub. It's upside down, so I lift the deep portion. Has a 4-inch exhaust tube with a fan that leads outside. I have almost zero noise with my frozen. Oh, makes sense. Yeah, I can see that. Thing to consider with resin is ventilation. You need a window opened or to keep it in the garage, something like that. Yeah, I can't keep it in the garage because, well, raccoons. Or there's some animals seem to like to go into the garage and sometimes eat the charcoal briquettes. I don't know what that's all about. But also, with winter, it's, that stuff would freeze. So garage ain't going to work for me. But, like I said, I'm trying to figure out how to best kind of ventilate that. I've got this little tiny room. It's over there, but down in the basement. So we'll see how that works out. It's fantastic to have stats for multiple games. Such a value multiplier. Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. The Big Bammer. Morning all, got the day off, but it's still not at home. So it's hello from Fort McMurray instead of Saskatchewan. I do like to say Saskatchewan. The Fireteam boxed game for GW is putting out, it looks a little bit like Underworlds for 40K. I don't think I've seen the Fireteam game. I'll have to look that up. Is it only available at Barnes & Noble or Target? Is it one of those? Because I haven't paid a ton of attention to those. I know they released a bunch of those recently, or at least talked about them. But yeah. Water washable resin I have smells a little more than the gray resin I have, but it's not too bad. The full progression is buying a single figure for your D&D game into Underworlds to Warcry at Age of Sigmar. I mean, yeah, I'm sure that there are folks that have gone down that road. I mean, I've talked to plenty of people like at conventions, like at Adepticon, who were like, oh yeah, I started playing Dawn of War on the PC, and then now I'm here at Adepticon playing at a 40K tournament. I mean, there's always something like that, yeah. Has anyone played Stargrave? Looks like it would be very good. Well, it's not out yet. But I got a copy early from Osprey. They sent it to me maybe 3 weeks ago, but they sent it to my work, and I've been working from home since last year, so I had to go in and get it, and it was sitting in the mailbox for quite some time. So yeah, I didn't get a chance. But yeah, no, it's supposed to be coming out in April, from what I understand, and it's... I gotta be honest, I'm liking the concept. Like, I enjoy Frostgrave, it's fine, but... I was thinking about this earlier. Frostgrave is kind of like... The idea behind Frostgrave is there's this city, there was a lot of magic at the city, it was magicians, magician colleges, all this stuff. Somebody did something, somebody forgot to carry the 5 in an equation, I don't know what, or maybe it was on purpose, I don't really know the lore that well. But the entire city was put under ice for 1,000 years, which sometimes you screw up and you forget to say the right incantation, and then that happens. So it's now 1,000 years later, and the city is starting to thaw out, And so bands of treasure hunters are coming from the countryside to go in and find cool crap and take it and make money with it. But there's also zombies and skeletons and there's random crap that you have to go up against. Stargrave is kind of like that, except that there's no ice. Also, it's the entire galaxy. There's basically been a giant galaxy-wide war, and everything has gone to crap, and there's no government basically anymore. Anytime anyone tries to like do anything that gets even a little too big, according to the fluff in here, space pirates come along and are like, yeah, I don't think we're gonna have any governments anymore, and just squish it out. And so it's all tiny little settlements, and it's ships of independence flying around and trying to do stuff, and it's literally like sci-fi post-apocalyptic because everything is ruined for the most part, you know what I mean? And it's sci-fi. So it's not like, oh, there's this one place we all go that is ruined, but everything else out here is fine. It's like everything's gone to hell. And so you're just trying to make your way. So it's got a bit of a Firefly vibe to it, except without the, like, Imperials or whatever the big government was in Firefly. Like, there is none of that. There's just everything is like the fringes for the most part. So it's kind of interesting. There's also, I mean, there's been people online I've seen that have complained. They're like, oh, it's just a reskinned Frostgrave. And I'm like, is that so bad? And it's not just a reskinned Frostgrave. It's the stats are a lot the same, and there's things like that. But there's also, like, in Frostgrave, your wizard, you pick a school for your wizard. Maybe it's elementalism or it's, whatever, necromancy. Then your apprentice has to do the same thing, pretty much. Well, in this, you've got your captain and you've got your first mate, or whatever you want to call them. They can be completely separate. You can get a lot more custom. You can do a lot more tweaking and fun stuff like that. So it's not a one-to-one, just like we turned necromancy into, I don't know, robot control. It's a different kind of system. But it's enough that if you've played Frostgrave at all, you'd be like, oh yeah, no, I totally see that. But if you haven't, it's still relatively simple because Frostgrave wasn't hard to learn. So yeah, it's cool. I've been digging it. And there's a lot of different models you could use. You could use Necromunda stuff. You could use, stuff you find 3D printed. You could use, they're going to be making some models, like some of those plastic models, kind of like they did for Frostgrave. Those will be coming out eventually too, so. Late to the party, had to perform birthday rituals with the family. Ooh, the birthday rituals. Let's see here. Now the cat is sleeping on my work seat again, doing nothing for another hour, as is the new schedule. Yeah, that's... You like lasers and guns and stuff, none of that in Frostgrave, and Fishmen in Space, eh? Well, I mean, you could do Fishmen in Space. Well, actually, I don't think there's aliens in this game. Now that I come to think of it. Well, no, there are. There must be. Because the plastic models that are coming out seem to have aliens in them. None of the pictures look like alien. Oh, well, no, she's just got a shaved head. That doesn't make a person an alien. That guy looks like an alien. I don't know. I guess I didn't read close into the alien thing. I think they didn't necessarily put a lot of, weight behind, and there's also aliens and they're scary. They were just kind of like, yeah, aliens, and it's fine. They're the same as, whatever. But yeah, I'll have to double check on that. Frostgrave slaps. I don't care if there are reskins. Okay, I mean, that's cool. I mean, again, like I said, it's not really a reskin, but it is the kind of the same. It's a reskin of Frostgrave, which is what a lot of people wanted. And that's what I wanted, honestly. But I watched a little bit of Ash Barker's video about Stargrave, and he led off by saying, and there must have been a lot more drama that I had come across. I had seen some people on Twitter being like, oh, it's just a Frostgrave refit, okay, fine. But evidently there was a lot of that in his comments, and he was like, look, if you don't want it, then don't pay attention. Don't watch this video. But don't just come into the comments and you call people stupid because they want a Frostgrave, remade to be sci-fi or whatever. It was really weird. So, the ice is my main appeal for Frostgrave. Well, I mean, it's right there in the name, not the frost. There you go. Moderator Matt, with the hot take, it would honestly be weird if Stargrave was a big departure from Frostgrave. I agree. If it was a completely different rule set and completely different mechanics and all that stuff, you'd be like, well, why'd they call it that? That like why you know what I mean? Frostgrave, Stargrave. Maybe eventually they'll make like a modern game that might be called like Wargrave. I don't. I just made that up. I don't know. It's probably not a very good name. But yeah, you know, I mean, if they decided to complete, it's kind of like if well, I mean, like Warcry is sort of a surprising departure from Age of Sigmar. Like there's a lot. The stats are nothing like each other. Kind of. There's movement's movement and defense is defense and junk like that. But if you look at like kill team to 40k, like those stat lines when you look at those models are nearly identical. So yeah, it would be weird if they just decided to completely change it and go to left field and then be like, yeah, but we're still using the same models or whatever the deal is. You'd be like, well, that's kind of odd. But so yeah, I think the anime Cowboy Bebop would be a good setting for Stargrave. That'd be kind of cool. I also think that Necromungrave would be a thing. Ooh, right, I mean, you could just use those models. I mean, that's kind of honestly what I'm planning on doing. I have a bunch of models that I've done that are kit bashed, a lot of different things. Some like 40k stuff, some Necromunda stuff, some models from other companies and things like that. And I made like warbands for Starbreach, but I can basically just take a lot of those models and just use them directly into Stargrave if I want to. So that'll be fun too. Oceangrave, Seagrave, Westgrave. Like Ash said, it's in the name, yeah. I love Frostgrave, can't wait for Stargrave. I like how Frostgrave is a great cross between miniatures game and RPG. That's very true. That's the thing that I've always been interested in Frostgrave is that it does definitely have some RPG elements. It's if anything, I would say that Frostgrave and soon to be Stargrave are probably good gateway games between, if you're trying to get your RPG friends into miniatures, it's I think probably one of the better ways to try to do it because it does have so many kind of RPG type elements, or at least elements that are recognizable to RPG folks. You know what I mean? Like when you just sit down and start saying, okay, well, we're going to play this like 40k, or we're going to play this kill team or whatever. You're controlling a bunch like more people than you might be expected to if you're just generally more of a D&D type player, and there's just a lot of things going on, all that kind of stuff. And I could see if this is your very first miniatures game, 40k is a rough hill to climb. Even kill team can be, but if you're like, look, you're picking these skills for this person, and it's kind of like you're building a character, except that you have these other, this rest of this crew or the rest of your henchmen, or whatever, that kind of thing. But you have these powers and these spells and then whatever. It can be, I think, a little bit more comfortable for your average RPG folk to be able to maybe start thinking a little bit more about miniatures games. Ooh, Walmart Grave. I got Deli Grave. Deli Grave. Modern Frostgrave is Maulgrave. Oh, there you go. I can see that. Cthulhu Grave. Nice. The horror game, Grave. Ooh, that's a good idea. I like that. Warhammer 40,000 very much started out as Warhammer Fantasy and Space. Fantasy and sci-fi appeal to somewhat different groups of people. I mean, I these days do enjoy both. I do still have a kind of a soft spot for a little bit more sci-fi generally, but I do like fantasy stuff as well. I've been really having a great time doing the Warcry stuff. Hey Emily, how you doing? Happy Sunday to you. It was kind of the same with the TSR game Gamma World. It was basically D&D in a post-nuclear apocalypse world. It was like, what did you expect? Yeah, no, yeah, absolutely, yeah. Gamma World was cool. I can use my Star Wars Legion models. Yeah, for Stargrave. Yeah, there's plenty of people who I've seen people talking online who are just like, yeah, I'm going to just use like a bunch of like rebels and then like a commander or two or whatever, and then there you go. With the rapid growth in channels and viewers across all platforms, do you think tabletop gaming will reach esports status? If so, what do you think that would look like? That is a good question. I don't think it will. There's a bunch of reasons why. Number one, I don't think it'll reach esports status because tabletop gaming is nowhere near video gaming as far as money, which is important. In 2019, all of tabletop gaming, board gaming, role-playing games, miniature games, Magic the Gathering type collectible card games and all that kind of stuff, the entire industry in 2019 brought in like $1.8 billion. $1.8 billion. In that same year, the video game industry brought in $187 billion. So tabletop gaming is 1% roughly of video gaming. I just saw a thing recently that Grand Theft Auto 5 has made more money than any other media in the entire world ever. It's made $6 billion. And if you even inflate or change or adjust for inflation, like Star Wars is made, like the original Star Wars is made like 3, and Gone with the Wind is made like $3 billion, and Grand Theft Auto is made 6. So we're small potatoes. So I don't see there being ever, like 60, 70, 80,000 people sitting in an arena watching somebody play Warhammer Underworlds. Secondly, frankly, it's just not as interesting to watch. Like, I'll watch somebody play a video game. I have a hard time watching battle reports, to be honest with you. They're just, and obviously there's people that do love them, but yeah, I just don't think it's got the big reach. And I'm not saying that this is bad. I'm not saying that we have to be like video games. Because I've had people ask this before. I was at a panel at the Las Vegas Open a couple years ago, and someone asked this. They're like, well, when do we get T games instead of E games? T being tabletop, as E being, electronic games. Or Esports. T-sports, I guess is what they were saying. It was a good idea. And I was just like, And I know there are people out there who are doing, like, color commentary and talking about stuff like that. I just don't think it has nearly the wide appeal. And so... yeah, I just don't think it's going to happen. And again, like I said, I don't know that it should. I mean, the people who want to do that type of thing, I'm not saying they shouldn't do it. I'm just saying that it's going to be small, it's going to be niche, because our entire hobby is small and niche, So if you want to do that stuff, great, do it. And obviously there is a audience, but there's not a million-person audience. I mean, there are like League of Legends games and stuff like that, or tournaments that are being watched by like 5 or 6 million people at a time online, and like I said, a big audience full of folks previous to COVID. Whereas like the Las Vegas Open, the big top table stuff for Games Workshop is getting 16, 17,000 viewers, but that's about max. So I don't know. It'd be sort of cool, but I honestly don't know that it needs to go in that direction. I think that we need to figure out our own thing, and I think that we also need to look at our industry, even though we talk about like Games Workshop being a huge company and Mantic being a big company and all these other companies. Some of these companies are very big companies. I think we kind of need to focus on the fact that our entire industry is indie, because it's so small in comparison to other types of entertainment, specifically video games. People watch snooker and darts. I can see tabletop gaming get into that. I mean, maybe, although sports are generally even bigger by a lot than tabletop gaming. But yeah, again, like I said, I'm not saying people aren't going to watch. People are already doing it, I just don't think it'll ever get... I think that there are people who think that we should focus on making it like esports, and we'll never get there. There's just not the amount of people. So you're saying that there's a chance. Let's see. The Morrow Project was a great post-apocalyptic game. Still, I've never heard of that. GTA highest? I think Pokemon wears that crowd. I mean, for a single title. GTA Grand Theft Auto 5, that specific single title is the largest. This is what the article said. It's made the most money of any media ever. Not Grand Theft Auto as a thing, because yeah, sure. I mean, like Star Wars all together amongst the merchandising and all that stuff. But it's a single piece of media. From what I understand, Grand Theft Auto has made $6 billion, and the next two closest are Gone with the Wind and the original, Episode 4, New Hope, Star Wars. I'd watch a well-edited battle report, but I would be bored silly watching a single-player video game. But Twitch is very, very popular with video games, obviously. That's the majority of the content on Twitch is video gaming. And there are plenty of people out there who are playing single-player video games, and people, hundreds, if not sometimes thousands of people are watching them. Now, that, understandably, is very frequently a lot to do with the streamer's personality. There are people that I've watched on Twitch that I'm like, I don't really care about this game a ton. I'm kind of interested, but I like listening to them talk or whatever. So personality goes a long way, to pull a line from Quentin Tarantino. T-Sports makes me think of Resident Evil. Yes, that's exactly it. And zombie. Well, I don't know about zombie apocalypse, but as soon as the person said T-Sports, I thought of like the T virus or whatever, and I was like, It's hard to weave a story into a bat rep unless you're also role playing. Yeah, I could see that. For me, battle reports are only as watchable as the people playing are likable, entertaining, and judiciously edited. It's difficult to say, but yes, I agree. Combining both, you are just over 1 billion in USD, and it takes combining both, you are just over 1 billion USD in 2020, and it takes less than one of the big studios. I don't think I missed the first part of that. Video games are McDonald's, and board games are our local burger joint that you go to every chance you get. I mean, as far as maybe size or scale, I could see that. I mean, I don't think we can just say that video games are homogenized. You know, like you go to any McDonald's, they're basically all the same. There's lots of different types of. There's indie video games. There's all that. But as an overall industry, they are absolutely massive. Video games is bigger than the entire music industry, the entire movie industry. Yeah, it's ridiculous. It's crazy. Let's see. I think it's the inherent issue of time thinking. Magic the Gathering, esports, and sports are more centered around breaking rules down and making snap calculations and making moves accordingly. Yeah, I can see that. Hades has got a lot of people watching. Yeah, I've heard of Hades. I haven't played it, but I've heard about it. I think I watched a bit of a no-clip documentary about it at one point, too, like on YouTube. That was kind of interesting. Because like they were getting close to release, and then the pandemic happened and all that stuff, and it was a whole thing. I'm very interested in 3D printing, but also really interested in learning about doing digital sculpting to make my own stuff. So many interests and not enough time. That's always the case. There's lots and lots of things to do, and not enough time to do them. Yeah, I could definitely see that. Watching people play video games is pretty much the most boring thing I can think of doing on the internet, but watching Uncle Adam play Cat Police, that's a different thing. Well, I mean, that's just your opinion, man. I mean, I appreciate that, first of all. But there are lots and lots of people who like to watch people play video games on the internet. I'm not interested in competitive video games on the internet. Like I said, the few people that I do watch that are sometimes on Twitch and things like that, it's generally because I think that they are funny, enjoyable to listen to, whatever. It's not, there's a guy that I watch that plays Sea of Thieves, and he's, I don't know, he's charismatic and I enjoy it, and he interacts with this other guy that he plays with online sometimes, and then sometimes his sister joins and they play, and then you get the interplay, and it's just fun. I mean, like, that's the fun part. And it's also a game that I play on and off once in a while, the pirate game, Sea of Thieves. But like competitive League of Legends, competitive anything, I'm just kind of like, that's fine. I don't really. But yeah, it's personality, like I said, goes a long way. Let's see. Wizards of the Coast made $816 million in 2020. GW made $374 million USD. The two bigger ones are not even some of the big electronic companies. Summed up, you are just over $1 billion in 2020 and is less than one of the big studios. Oh, I see what you mean. One of the big video game studios. Yeah. Well, like I said, there's a website called ICV2, which, anyway, they're like about the tabletop gaming industry, but they're also about like comics. They're about all kinds of like kind of nerd culture stuff, but they're a business website mainly. And they put out a graphic at the beginning of 2020 about 2020 or 2019, and in that they broke down of the four genres mainly. Your board games and your RPGs and your miniatures and it was funny because like Magic the Gathering I think was the biggest, and then let me take that back. Collectible card games was the biggest, which now of course Pokemon's doing great. So yeah, collectible card games was the biggest portion of the industry, I believe, and then I expected the next one to be board gaming, but actually I think miniatures was above it. RPGs was at the bottom. Now, the thing that's interesting about that is RPGs are incredibly popular, but to play, you need a book, generally, and maybe some dice. But you don't need nearly as much stuff as you do, like, tabletop RPGs are probably one of the more popular, partially because it's quite cheap to do. You're not constantly buying new decks. You're not constantly buying new decks. You're not constantly buying new decks. You're not constantly buying new miniatures. And you're not constantly buying new board games. You buy your, 5th edition player's handbook and you get some pencils and paper and you're basically done. Maybe you get like a little dude if you're playing with a miniature or whatever. And if you're a dungeon master, you probably buy more books and maybe you play different systems. But yeah, it's tons of people play RPGs, but it is actually, according to this chart, is one of the smallest as far as actual revenue because probably you don't have to spend as much money to do it. But yeah, I think for being the number of people who play tabletop wargaming, the stuff that we do, if it's just by number of people, we're in 4th place out of 4. But by money, we're in 2nd place, behind the Magic folks. So yeah, that's interesting. What do you think is the barrier to tabletop? Is it the price range or simply the actual physical side of it? I think for a lot of people, it's because the hobby portion, they don't see it as enjoyment. And I did a video about this a while ago, about completion, I think. It was one of the videos I did recently. And it was like, some people look at the game, like, okay, I went to the store and I bought this kit of space dudes, whatever they are, space monkeys, whatever. And now I have to come home and I have to take it out of the box and I have to glue them all together. I have to cut them off the sprues before I glue them all together, and then I have to prime them and then I have to paint them and all this, it's terrible. And now I finally get to play the game. Whereas when you go play a video game, you go download, you toddle off and do whatever, come back and then play the game. In my mind, though, the fun starts when I open up the box of the models and I get to start building them. But there's a lot of people that don't feel that way. And I think that's part of the issue. It's easier to start playing video games, but I don't know that ease is necessarily, it's quicker. But one of the reasons I like tabletop games is because I find specifically war games, is because I enjoy the hobby part of it, the creativity of it, and all that kind of stuff, getting better at it and all that. Whereas with video games, it's a little bit more like watching a movie. Like if you had to build the movie before you could watch it, people wouldn't watch nearly as many movies. If that's not a good analogy, but you see what I'm saying. Yeah, so I think that's part of it there, is that, especially within wargaming, is there's a perception that you have to jump over all these hurdles before you can start playing. But my personal belief is that that's true. You have to jump over hurdles before you start playing, but you can enjoy the hurdles. Playing is not the first thing that you get to enjoy. I really enjoy all the stuff before the playing, and I also enjoy the playing, but I'm not, it's a different mindset, I guess. Most fun I've had playing video games is with a group of buddies, all trying to be taking turns, savagely critiquing each other's playstyles, giving running commentary. Oh yeah, I mean, back in the day when I played a lot more video games, there were online games that I played for far longer than I would have, only because of the group of people I was playing with. I played an MMO way back in the day called Dark Age of Camelot, and I had been playing it solo for a while and was about to probably kind of stop playing, and then I hooked up with some people through a friend of a friend and whatever, and then we just started playing every Wednesday, and I probably played it 6 more months, like regularly, like every Wednesday night we would play from like 7 p.m. until way past my bedtime, and it was all about the folks. I mean, that was playing with those folks is what expanded that out, which is why I think MMOs are so popular, is because they know if they can get you playing with a group of people, then you're likely to keep playing longer, so. I guess I am watching some paint dry right now on this Dark Angel's Power Sword. Well, that's, that happens. Get yourself a hair dryer. That I use that a lot for, especially in my airbrush room. I use that a lot for drying paint, so I can get the next layer on or that kind of stuff. Works out real well. Next GW release, new faction, Codex Space Monkeys. I'd buy that. There's got to be a sculptor out there, like a 3D resin sculptor out there who's doing Space Monkeys. There's got to be. Should be. If not, there ought to be. I just started in 40K after reading about it for years, and the biggest barrier is having someone willing to learn the rules and play with. Yeah, I mean, I have found that the easiest way to learn rules, for me personally, is to stumble through a game, even if you're by yourself. Like, you get like a squad of, whatever and a squad of whatever, or you just use dice or, soda caps, whatever, I don't know. And then you go, okay, so these guys are going to fire, and you're reading the book, and you're reading, like I said, this happens, and I do this, and you basically stumble through it. Like, okay, so I'm supposed to roll 1 for each of these. Okay, and I'm looking for what number here. Okay, well, that's this many. And when you do it a couple of times, just mess around with it, even by yourself, and then these guys shoot back. And then when you go back and read the book again, stuff starts to make so much more sense. I have found, obviously you have to read the book, but there's so many times I read it, I'm like, I don't know what the heck I'm looking at. None of this makes any sense. And then you stumble through, literally, well, okay, not literally stumble, but you just force your way through a game and do it. And if you don't want to do it in front of a friend or whatever, you want to just play by yourself, just so you understand the idea. Then when you read the rules again, all of a sudden it just comes so into clarity. And then you're like, oh, see that? Oh, yeah, no, I did that over here, and now I know why that happens, and this makes sense in the book. That's a super important, at least, and it's, for some people, they can just read the book and go, yep, cool, got it. But for a lot of people, specifically me, I need to read the book, then try it, even if it's really unsuccessful, or if it's just completely, like a very simplified, stripped down me and my, soda pop cans or whatever. Then I understand the book a lot more. So that can help a lot. Dark Age Camelot. Woo! It was fun. I enjoyed that. Do you think GW or some company would ever consider making a starter set that had pre-painted and assembled models? That might make people a little bit less intimidated. I don't think so. Number one, pre-painted and pre-assembled models. Pre-assembled's not the end of the world. Pre-painted's a pain in the butt. Or you get what you get out of HeroClix, which is not great. Star Wars X-Wing models look great, but spaceships are a lot easier to paint in a factory type situation than people are. There's a lot of techniques that you can do for making a spaceship look worn and weathered that you can do at an industrial type scale. That's really hard to do that with, like, just an entire, assembly line full of Supermans, you know what I mean, to make them not look weird. So yeah, that's definitely. AT-43 has space monkeys. They're called Carmins. That's true. That's right. I remember them. I might have some, maybe. I have some AT-43 stuff. I don't know if I have any of the monkeys. What is the best non-Citadel rattle can for priming 40K? Probably you go to your local auto parts store and you get yourself some automotive Sandable Primer. Now, it's not going to come in a bunch of great colors. It's going to come in black. It's going to come in gray. Might come in white. Might come in red oxide, which is kind of a maroon, dark red color. That's going to be about it. But Sandable Auto Primer is a very smooth rattle can primer. I used it for years, up until I started using Krylon generally, or Rust-Oleum's not bad, but Krylon's a little. The paints are nearly the same. It's just that Krylon's got the better nozzle. The nozzles on the Rust-Oleum are not as good. Anyway, but yeah, I use those as well for primer a lot. But otherwise, the automotive Sandable Primer, like Duplicolor is the brand I used here quite a bit, but there's other brands as well. But Sandable Auto Primer, shake it real good, spray, don't put it on too thick. You can get a really nice smooth primer coat on your models if you're going to use a rattle can. But like I said, you don't get all kinds of cool colors too usually. Could be one of the barriers to entry. People think it takes a long time and patience to paint these dudes. I mean, it can, depending on how you want to do it. I like to try to teach people that there are simple techniques. You can use some dry brushing and things like that. If you want it to look like the magazines, well, that takes a long time. Not just in the actual physical paint job, but the amount of experience it takes to get to the point where you made that paint job. That takes a long time. But if you want it to look pretty decent or okay, even on the tabletop, you can do that really not that hard. But it's when people think that painting is a chore that then that becomes a barrier to entry as well. And I don't know that there's a great. Could there be a campaign of some sort to teach people that painting is not a chore? It's not necessarily easy. It's not push button, but it's not hard either, and it's enjoyable. It's a fun thing that you can do with your hands. It's a hobby. It's but yeah, if there's a campaign that can help to do that, I don't see the big companies doing it too much. I try to tell people that all the time, that they should look into this as a hobby because it's a lot of fun and it's stress relieving, and pop on some headphones, listen to an audiobook or a podcast or some music or Twitch or YouTube or whatever you want, and just work away. And it's just I really find it the enjoyment from it and the almost meditative quality of it. It's a definite positive in my life, and so yeah, I mean that's I don't know. Aren't there Gundam kits or similar type kits that use different colored plastic so that when assembled they're essentially base colored with no need to paint? Yeah, many Gundams are. That wouldn't work real well in Games Workshop stuff because it's probably, Games Workshop has done colored plastic before, but the way that the parts go together, there's no way to make the hand a different piece necessarily and then make it out of a different colored plastic from the arm without making all the pieces incredibly tiny. Like you see more and more these days, a lot of the models from Games Workshop are, they kind of go together like sort of one way. Some of them are monopose, not all of them. Some of them are a little bit more posable. But yeah, it's tough to do and to get each of those parts. But when you've got a robot who's like yay tall and he's all segmented out of different parts, then yeah, you can make him out of different colored plastic. And then when you put him together, he kind of almost looks like he's painted. And I don't know why I'm saying he because it's a robot, but you know what I'm saying. Yeah, it's at this scale, that's much tougher than it is at this scale or even this, whatever. Nice to catch you live again. Rare for me over here on the West Coast. Currently painting a model I've been working on for almost a year. Still enjoyed every minute of it. Absolutely, Josh. Good to hear. The new GW card game should be interesting. Horus Heresy Legions is very popular, so if they use it as a model in physical form, maybe it will be successful. I haven't heard of it, I guess. I know I've heard of Horus Heresy Legions, the mobile game, but I don't know anything. I guess I didn't catch that part. Hey, Artist Empire, how you doing? I'm a painting as a chore type person. Go figure. I mean, it's a personal preference. Like, just some people just don't dig it, and some people do. Sometimes, like, I know when I first started, I was like, I wanted to paint these models to have them look good so I could play, but I was like, ugh, the painting, I kind of, and I would put it off a lot. But over time, I've gotten, I don't know, I just like started to pick it up more and just started to enjoy it more. And like I said, I very strongly find that the audio component for me is a big deal. Like, if I'm listening to an audiobook and I really want to know what happens in the next chapter, I'm not just going to put in put it in the headphones and then listen to the audiobook. It's just like sitting in the living room like this. That would be weird. I don't know. You'd be like some sort of serial killer. Probably not. But if you listen to a podcast, like whenever I'm listening to podcasts or audiobooks, I'm doing something else. Maybe I'm cleaning the litter box. Maybe I'm not mowing the lawn because I don't like to have... the lawnmower's loud enough already. I don't want to have to turn up my podcast way too loud and it's pain. But maybe I'm taking a walk or whatever. But generally, when I'm listening to audio like that, I'm painting. So I kind of tie I want to find out what goes on in the book to also another way to motivate me to go downstairs and paint. And at this point now, I just enjoy it enough that I'm looking forward to going down and painting too. So, first rule of big companies: outsource to reduce costs. So having influencer do it is better for them. I think I missed the first part of that. Yeah. Let's see here. Easy to build and contrast paints were the closest thing to making it super easy to have tried. Yeah. No, absolutely. I would definitely say that, like, Games Workshop in general over the last, say, 7-8 years has definitely focused on how to get people into the hobby. Previous to that, they did not. They were just like, this is our game. These are our people. Hopefully they don't all die because of, that's the thing is people were aging out of the hobby and they were starting to watch numbers sort of drop. And then they were like, what we should do? Maybe we should try to get new people into the hobby. And then that's when, a lot of things changed. That and the new CEO helped too. So, I think the painting stigma could be promoted by the videos of how fast can I paint 200 models, videos and similar content on YouTube that highlights it as something that you need to get done. I think that sometimes the idea behind that is more along the lines of like, look, it can be fast. But I think some people can take it from the fact of like, it's something I have to try to speed through so I can start to play. I feel like it's coming from, look, it doesn't have to take forever, but I think that some people maybe read it the wrong way. But I understand that too, yeah. I like to just show, instead of saying, look how many things I can get done in a short period of time, I generally just like to show you look, these are the processes I did to make this done quickly. Like, I did that with those little Chaos Cultists. To some degree, I did it with those Necrons that I did from Indominus. Like, they went together, they painted up pretty quickly because I primed them black, sprayed them silver from above. Actually, no, I dry brushed them silver from above. It was some of the other models I sprayed. But those guys I dry brushed with a big makeup brush, and then used some either Agoros Dunes or Skeleton Horde. I think it was Skeleton Horde contrast paint to give it that kind of like almost like rusty sort of corroded look over the silver, and then did some stippling here and there, and painted the blades and that kind of stuff, and boom, done. It was relatively short process, and I've talked to a lot of people who online and stuff who've been like, hey, I watched your video and I followed your thing and they turned out great. So I was glad to hear that too. I think part of the problem these days is that people are expecting instant gratification. I mean, that's true, but I think people have been saying that for a long time as well. I don't think it's completely new. Things just do move faster in general these days than versus when I was a kid, that's for sure. I mean, like, it used to be the case that, like, when summer came around, you kind of mostly stopped watching television because all of the shows were done for the summer, and then it was reruns all summer. So maybe you caught it if it was one time that you missed something. If you were like this show, but you missed it, well, you couldn't tape it, really, because, maybe once in the late 80s you could start taping stuff, or maybe the mid-80s, depending on, whether your parents actually had a VCR or not. But yeah, you basically only watched reruns if it was something that you missed that you wanted to see. Otherwise, you were out playing and doing whatever and all that kind of stuff, and that's fine. But nowadays, there's no like, oh, all the new shows are coming up. I mean, on regular television, yeah, if you still watch that stuff, sure. Generally, like September-ish is when new shows start. But all the other streaming services, it's just like constantly, and there's no seasons anymore, particularly as far as they're like, oh, this is the new TV season. It's like, no, it's just, we'll have the season when we're done making the next season, and that kind of thing. So Green Stuff World Intensity inks are a great alternative to GW contrast paints, cheaper too, and in dropper bottles. See, I don't want my contrasts in dropper bottles because I like to just dip the brush into the contrast. Same with the washes. I like opaque paints. I want those to be in dropper bottles because they're going to go onto my wet palette. But I never like to put washes on my wet palette. I never like to put contrast paints on my wet palette. So there's that. But I've never tried any Green Stuff World stuff. Well, that's not true. I own several of their acrylic roller thingies for making textures on your bases. But every other thing that they've ever made, I've just never seen it. Like, I've seen their rollers at a couple of conventions, and that's where I've bought them in person. But I've never been to a store that carries Green Stuff World around by me, so I've never seen it. Well, they're Spanish, right? I think they're from Spain or Portugal, somewhere over there. So probably in Europe, I think you see it a little bit more than you do around here. In follow-up to the Friday video, which business model makes for producing the best rule sets? I feel the GW business is built on lore and plus miniatures, and that doesn't make for creating good rule sets. I don't know. I mean, I don't know that it's necessarily a situation that any of those different business models inherently makes a good or a bad rule set. Just because you're totally indie and you make this and you've got like no miniature line and you're just like, hey man, use whatever cool thing you want to use, doesn't necessarily make it a good rule set. Doesn't not make it a good rule set, but it doesn't, the size of the company, none of that stuff really matters, I think. It's really about, it's just straight up about the rule set, you know what I mean? And the people who create it. Sure, there are times that you can design something with the thoughts of, we have to design it this way to sell more plastic, versus we design it this way because we think it'll be more fun. And that's a business decision that, well, again, that's a decision that needs to be made, but it can also be a business decision, But when the majority of your profits might come from plastic, then you have a tendency to sometimes move products that move more plastic. And don't misunderstand. The fact that we're seeing more and more skirmish games out there, which each of them uses fewer models, that doesn't necessarily mean that these companies are happy to sell more model or sell fewer models. It's just that they understand that customers are not interested in buying more models in some situations. So they still have to kind of adjust things to get more people in the door. You have to give them these easier, like kind of, the trick is that if you are interested in playing skirmish games, if you want to win, don't all of a sudden change your mind and decide, well, I got all these skirmish models for this guy. I'll just start playing the full army game, because that's kind of how they get you. And again, it's not nefarious. It's up to you whether you want to spend the money or not. But that is kind of them trying to pull you towards buying more models. That's why, frankly, the companies that give away the rules, that's partially because they're like, well, if we give you the rules, you're more likely to spend the money you didn't spend on a book on models, hopefully. That's the thing. So, yeah, I don't know that either of those business models is particularly inherently better or worse for actual rule sets. That completely comes down to the designer. But like I said, there can be some little tweaks here and there. There's going to be some things that you might do to your rule set to hopefully help you shift more models than not. And that can be a little disingenuous maybe or whatever. Oops. People who find painting onerous don't do so because YouTube videos. They didn't like it before YouTube videos. Well, that's sure. I guess that, yeah. You're awesome and your channel is beyond helpful. Thank you. Well, I appreciate it. Thank you very much. Macaronium. Whatever happened to JP Got Rocket? Sorry if I missed their spelling. Uncle Ad used to mention the name a lot. I haven't heard it for a while. He was here a couple weeks ago, I think. Maybe he's... maybe work schedule or something like that changed. That's possible. Uncle Adam, can you do a video of your stippling technique? Totally already did. I think it's about weathering. It's got a picture of a Nurgle guy with a big icon on the front. Let me go look real quick. But yes, I did do a video about that. It is called... Weathering and Corrosion with Contrast Paint. It's from 5 months ago. Weathering and Corrosion with Contrast Paint from 5 months ago. That basically in there I show you how to use stippling with contrast paints to build up like corrosion and weathering and stuff like that. And I use it for shading and all kinds of different things. But yeah, so that is a thing. Let's see. All my contrasts are in dropper bottles now. It's a life choice, not for everyone. Absolutely. I'm not telling you that you're wrong. I'm just saying I like to do it because I like to dip the brush. But if you like to put your contrasts onto a dry palette or a wet palette or whatever, and maybe because you like to thin it a lot, stuff like that, then that makes more sense. But I like to usually just use contrast straight out of the tub. So yeah. Let's see here. I'm still using a set of Citadel inks from 1995, Expert Ink Set. It was a game changer for me. Eventually, those will maybe run out, which is a bummer, but yeah. GW drives model sales partly through rules. New stuff is always pretty much more powerful. Yeah, I mean, all companies have done that. I used to play... Well, almost all companies probably. I mean, it seems like most companies do it. Let's say it that way. I used to play, gosh, back in the early 2000s, I used to play the Star Wars miniatures game. And I don't mean Star Wars Legion. I mean the one that was pre-paints from Wizards of the Coast. They had the license at the time, and they made pre-paints, and it was like HeroClix. You bought a box, and you didn't know what was in there. And they kept coming out with new sets, just like HeroClix has been doing for the last 68 years or whatever. So first they started off with like, episode 4 type models, and then they were like, and then this type, and then, next movie, and then, the prequels, because the 7, 8, and 9 hadn't been out yet. So then they started dipping into like the extended universe and all this stuff, and they got to keep coming out with model boxes to keep people to keep buying models. Yeah, and it just kept going that way, and you would start to notice, because I really liked, for whatever reason at the time, I decided I really liked the Clone Wars type models. Like nowadays, I want to stick with the regular kind of old school episodes 4, 5, and 6 for Star Wars Legion. I don't want to move into the Clone Wars stuff. I mean, the clones are cool, but the droids are just real fiddly and hard to build, in my opinion. So I don't want to go down that road. Anyway, when it was all pre-paints, I loved having a big droid army and stuff like that and using them. And so I predominantly focused on that set. But then new sets would come out and new sets would come out and new sets would come out. And it would get to a point where I would realize that, yeah, the new sets were more powerful by a good deal than the stuff that I had from 8 months ago or even earlier. So, but yeah, that's how you get people to buy new stuff. You have to make it better. And that's just the kind of way it works. But within a game like that, if you decide to write a rule set, in my mind, specifically if you don't have miniatures attached to it, then you want to make the rule set the best it is. It's very difficult, I've found, at least in this industry, to be a big company that sells a single rule set. You know what I mean? If you're a big company, I can't think of any big miniatures companies that don't sell miniatures. You know what I mean? Miniature wargaming companies. I can't think of a company out there that doesn't sell miniatures. The companies that sell just the rule set generally are a good deal smaller, a good deal more indie, if you want to use that terminology. And that's fine, but they either make a game, it has some limited popularity, and then they try to make expansions and stuff like that, or they make a game, and then they make a different game, and then they make a different game, that kind of stuff. I guess Osprey is close, but you can buy models from Osprey, but they're technically this is like a partnership that they're working with a different company called North Star Military Figures, is who makes the plastics. Like Oathmark Plastics as well, same type of thing, goes through North Star. So it's not really, that's more of a partnership situation. But yeah, I would say Osprey is probably the biggest one that just sells look at Gaslands and Gaslands Reloaded. They're not selling cars with that. They're just here you go. Just. Now, that being said, North Star does sell a sprue of just tiny little machine guns and rocket launchers and cow catchers to put on the front of your truck and stuff like that. And then you can use those when you're building your Gaslands vehicles. So yeah, I guess if there's a company out there that's doing it, I guess it's Osprey. Probably there's the only one out there that's just selling mainly rule sets and is kind of a biggish company in that it's not 2 people or something like that working there. So. Hey, Joshua Daniel Flores, how you doing? Good evening from the Philippines, Uncle Adam. Currently cleaning my late father's old vintage watches with my ultrasonic cleaner while listening. Well, don't put your airbrush in there at the same time. It'll mess up that watch, I bet. Let's see. Rules, bloat, and power creep are a direct result of the business model. Yeah, no, that's very true. That's very true. GW releases new models with stinker rules as much as overpowered rules. I think sometimes that's perceived. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, there's also times when I think it's by mistake. They'll put out a new model and stuff like that, and it will have just bad rules, and it's maybe because they... And I don't know about it anymore. They do more playtesting, external playtesting, than they used to. So things are a little bit better that way. But for a long time, Games Workshop did all their playtesting internally, and when everybody at the company kind of had the same mindset, it was sort of a forest for the trees kind of situation. They would put out stuff like a codex and be like, nope, this is going to be great. It'll be super fun and great. And then real competitive people would get together and say, well, I can break this by doing this, this, and this, and now I've got an unbeatable army or whatever the deal is. And then the people at Games Workshop would be like, well, why would you play that way? And they're like, because I'm trying to win a tournament. And the people at Games Workshop weren't thinking that way, frankly. They were all kind of I don't want to say in a bubble, but that's how they kind of play tested at the time. Now they've got this group called the Mournival, whatever, anyway. And it's, frankly, it's people like Reese and Frankie from Frontline Gaming, and it's people who are judges at Adepticon, and it's people who are playing also in the competitive realm who are taking a look at these rules and coming back and saying, this is a problem, this is maybe going to be something that someone can cheese out, this is whatever, this is underpowered, and so they're getting more feedback that way. I'm not qualified to tell you whether or not it's working out better or not. I got to be honest with you, because again, I'm not really playing in the competitive field. And I'm really not playing 40K, but that I know is at least what's going on these days. Thanks for your videos on Warcry warbands. I realized after watching the video I have at least 8 warbands, many as Cities of Sigmar from my previous Warhammer Fantasy Battles models. See, that's the other benefit too, is you're ready to go already. I used Tamiya, I should call them and find out how to pronounce that. Panel liner on Warcry terrain wood pieces. It's a lot easier to control than the washes in tiny areas. Nice. What color should I use to underpaint red over white primer? What color should I use to under... I would probably tell you to go with a brown. Like, if you're going to have to... Like, if you've already primed it white, but you need an area that needs to be red, I would tell you to hand brush that with a brown, preferably a darkish brown, and then put the red over the top of it. If you put the red over the white, it's going to go kind of pink, and you're going to get kind of splotchiness through it. But if you put that brown over there, there will still be a little bit of splotchiness, but then when you put the red over the brown, the splotchiness will should go away, unless it's really, really splotchy when you put the brown over it. Depends on how thickly you put it on there, too. But brown being a warm color, red being a warm color, it works well. If you go black, black is, depending on the pigment, very frequently, with a lot of pigments these days, it does skew a little bit more towards the cool side. So then you're having a cool undercoat with a warm overcoat, and it's just kind of weird. I think game designers that make a game and move on usually make for the best games. No minis to sell, no power creep expansions, etc. Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree. I think that, like, I like Zona Alpha. There has been an expansion that is free download. It's basically, frankly, it's single player and co-op. And you probably very frequently you end up making some sort of FAQ because somebody somewhere is like, well, what if you do this and this and this and this, and then this is unbeatable, and you're like, oh yeah, I didn't think of that. So FAQs are always going to happen. It's a bummer if they happen on day one when you ship the product. But these things happen. But yeah, I think I personally feel that the thing is that the small little indie companies, they don't have the marketing, they don't have the reach. So people who are coming into the industry, they see the big names and the big marketing, and they go, well, this is the game. And I made a video about this a long time ago, kind of talking about music. When you first started getting into music as a kid, you listened to pop music very frequently. Most people are listening to pop music. And then if you start to really get into music, your tastes have a tendency to change, and you get into more indie stuff and more, interesting, whatever that means, stuff. And it can be the same way with them, but there are also people who always just listen to pop music, and they're totally fine with it, and there's nothing wrong with it. Tabletop gaming, specifically wargaming, can be the same thing. Same with board gaming. Like you start, like when I was a kid, I was playing Monopoly and Life and Sorry and all that stuff, and then most people did a lot. And then eventually you get older and you start being interested, maybe like, oh, Carcassone's pretty cool, or Settlers of Catan. And then you're like, well, that's pretty cool, but those are still kind of within kind of the indie space. They're stored the bigger dogs. And so, well, what about this? And then you get to the point where you're playing some rule set you had to print out, and it's a whole thing, and you're playing a board game that way, print and play rules and stuff like that that's out there. If you go down that road, there's plenty of indie people who are out there making interesting stuff. Same with RPGs as well. There's a lot of indie RPGs out there. So, but not everybody, some people are like, I like to play D&D 5. That's what I play. There's nothing wrong with that. That's totally cool. Yeah, it's just personal preference always. I've heard good things about the one-page rules, and their business model is basically only doing rules and releasing rules for free to promote donations, but I haven't used them yet. Yeah, I mean, the rules are free, but they also do have like premium versions of the rules that they sell. Like if you go onto Wargame Vault. It's either Wargame Vault or Wargames Vault. I think it's Wargame Vault. You can find their games on there as well for like $5. But they're then slightly fancier versions of the free ones. Same with Star Breach. There's a free version of Star Breach, but then there's also a maybe $10 like slightly fancier PDF version of Star Breach, and then there's also like I showed in Friday's video, there's also a book that you can buy, like that's print. So, but it's not like you're getting less of the rules. You're maybe getting less of the stats. From what I understand, with one page, you can get the game rules for free, but I think you have to follow them or you have to basically do the Patreon thing for them if you want to get, well, how do I take my Dark Eldar and put them into one-page rules? Like they have all the army lists and stuff like that behind there. If you want to make your own army lists, knock yourself out. But if you want a bunch of pre-generated extra content, then that's why you pay them. Plus, you want to support them. That's why you do the Patreon thing. Plus, now they're doing STL files for printing and stuff like that. So they're not only just making an electronic download version of their book, but they're also making, here's electronic download versions of the models that you can use when you're playing our games, and that's pretty cool. So, yeah. I only play rule sets you've never heard of. See, exactly. That's also a thing. Thankfully, I was adopted by some cool high schoolers, and the first album I paid cash for was Operation IV Energy. Well, see, that's why I said most. Most people, when they get into music, they like my first album. I think I got it as a present, like for my birthday or Christmas or something like that. I think it might have been Thriller by Michael Jackson. I think. Then there was some Hall & Oates in there. Remember that? And then when I started buying my own stuff, there was also Huey Lewis. Yeah, there was definitely some Huey Lewis in there. I remember going to high school my freshman year, and there was definitely Sports. Huey Lewis's album Sports was very popular. I'm not thinking about rankings. I'm thinking wins based on the probability of winning rolls. I think I missed something there. Oh, Math Hammer. Oh, yeah, I've never really done any Math Hammer because I'm not very good at math, frankly. Have you switched from winter to summer tires yet? Yeah, I don't switch tires here. I mean, frankly, I've not been going anywhere because I've been working from home, not driving back and forth to, so yeah. But yeah, I've never been a tire switcher guy, really. I know some places do that, but yeah, I've not been big into that. Depends on the type of music you listen to. Hi, Adam, how are you? Did you see the Warhammer preview yesterday? It looks more amazing. I caught it a little bit later. I expected it was going to be earlier in the day, but then our daylight savings time, and so I woke up and it was still sort of on, but I just caught the very end of it, and then I looked at some of the stuff online, and that was about it. So yeah, like I said, I like the Redemptionist stuff. Some of the other models look cool too, like some of the other junk. Some of the other Age of Sigmar stuff I thought was cool looking. I don't really like the Blood Knights that much. They're okay. I don't know why. I've just never liked... For the most part, other than the new sculpts for Slaves to Darkness, whatever they call it, Chaos Knights, the new Chaos Knights are pretty cool. The Varangard are quite cool. But nearly any other cavalry in the game, I kind of look at the models and I go, I don't know what it is. There's just something about them. I'm just like, I don't like most cavalry in that game. In Age of Sigmar or, 40k, it's dudes on motorcycles, which is dumb. But yeah, so, I don't know. It's interesting. I don't know. I've never been really super jazzed on the cavalry. Like I said, other than those new Chaos Knights, which I think are really cool. All those new Chaos models in that, like Slaves of Darkness Start Collecting Box, those are all, as the kids say, dope sculpts. So there's that. But yeah. So, like I said, my plan is, hopefully, I want to, because I've been doing more and more painting of 3D printed models, which I've really been enjoying. I have some pictures, ? Let's say I do. This is a button, and then that. Let me do this. And then let me do this, and let me do this. All right, so, do I have many of them on here? I guess maybe not as many as I thought. So this is a 3D printed model that I did recently that was a lot of fun. It is from a sculptor called Lord of the Prints, and I think I got it on myminifactory.com, and the STL file, I mean. I think I have to be over here, or one of the places. And anyway, so I did that, and I really enjoyed working with him and painting him. He's a very cool model. I had Matt from Game Force scale him up a little bit because I want him to be a little bigger, which is also the thing that I think is really interesting about 3D printing models, is that you can kind of like, I think he should be a bit smaller. You can make him smaller or bigger or whatever. If you go crazy, it's going to look a little weird maybe, but you can do that if you want to. And I think that's very cool. And then these guys, I started painting, according to this, about 7 days ago. And I forget who makes these models, the sculpts, but again, they're 3D printed. And I was building them on Twitch. Whoops. They're like segmented in that, like, a lot of times the models are all one piece. Like, these models are all one piece, just a single print. And, I stuck them to the base, but other than that, single print. Dang it. Anyway, but these were modular only because then you could change what you could switch weapons around, you could switch different heads on there and stuff like that. They, I think, also had some that were already completely one piece. If you were just like, if this is fine, great. But they also gave you swords and flails and different heads. There was like 3 or 4 different heads and 3 different bodies and a bunch of stuff and blah, blah. So that was very cool. And gives you a lot of options that way. Whereas these guys, you could also get the STLs. The STLs came in separate parts, but there was also some that were just all one. And I was like, I found the poses I liked, and I was like, yep, let's do that. And then these are them finished recently as well. So I don't know. I just really am enjoying painting on these. I got to be very honest. One of the best things about working with this type of model, no mold lines. Just I would look for them, like as a course of habit. I'd be like, oh yeah, no, I gotta scrape the mold lines, and then I'd be like, oh, well, there are no mold lines. That's right, because these weren't in a mold, so I don't have to worry about that. Yeah, and so that's one of the things. That and the fact that I have access to so many different models out there because of just all of the stuff that's available from different Patreons. My Mini Factory, I think, is the big place for me. I don't know, like if there's a manufacturer or a sculptor that I really, really like, I could easily see following them on Patreon. Most of those Patreons are about $10 a month, and you generally get between 10 and 20 new models every single month. Some go far beyond that. Some go, we give you 10 models, a vehicle, 30 different bases every month, whatever, all that kind of stuff. And you can get a ton of things to have available to print, which is very cool. On the other hand, if you're like, I want very specific things, I don't want all the stuff that this guy produces, I just want this one thing, then you go to My Mini Factory, which is where most of the Patreon sculptors, that's where the most of their stuff ends up after the Patreon is done. As it turns out, and I did not know this, most of the Patreon sculptors fulfill their Patreon orders through My Mini Factory. So if you follow a Patreon person and you say, hey, I want to pay you $10 a month or whatever and get your stuff, you will get the links at the end of every month from My Mini Factory that says, here's this month's stuff for so-and-so. And then you download it from them, which is super nice because it also it makes it easier for the sculptors, so they're not constantly having to do all the fulfillment and email and, oh, I got it in my spam folder and I didn't get it, can you send it again, and all that jazz. Plus, you then, like if your laptop falls in the sea and you need to re-download all your STLs, they're going to be there on My Mini Factory. You don't have to, goof around so much. So all that stuff I think is really interesting, and I'm really enjoying that kind of aspect to it. The quality I'm seeing, the stuff that's just coming out of that printer, which again is the Elegoo Saturn, is the one that I'm looking at getting. All the prints that Matt has made for me have been astounding, just really, really good. And yeah, I just really dig it. I would love to get into sculpting. I don't think I'm talented enough, but that doesn't mean I can't work with a sculptor maybe to get some things done that I might want to potentially do for maybe to either sell or something like that through the channel. I don't know. But yeah, there's definitely options there. And I really, especially nowadays with COVID and all that stuff, if I can just send you a file and then you can print it, and versus me having to send you a model that like maybe it was resin poured or whatever, I think you're going to see a lot more people and a lot more companies that are interested in doing that because there's no more shipping. You don't have to say, oh yeah, well, Brexit and VATs and I don't know, customs and all this other stuff that's going on. It'd just be like, boop, download, set it over here, print it, and there you go. I mean, I think there's a big benefit to doing that. It's not available for everybody. There's still obviously kinks to work out. Resin printing is a lot better than it was, a lot cheaper than it was, but it's also a lot better than it was even 2-3 years ago. Like 2-3 years ago, you would kick stuff out of your resin printer and then you'd have to figure out how to UV cure it so that it would like stay the way it's supposed to stay and all that stuff. And you had to figure out how to wash it. And so people had all these weird techniques and they were like using UV LEDs that they bought on Amazon and putting it into a bowl that was silver on the inside and it was all kinds of stuff. Now there's just like equipment you can buy that's like a UV curer for resin prints or a UV wash station for resin prints. And if you want to go down that road, it's easier and better and cheaper and whatever, all that kind of stuff. Well, maybe not cheaper, I suppose, than UV LEDs in a weird metal bowl that you drill holes in. I saw a guy do that on YouTube one time and I was like, that seems like a lot of work. But yeah, so it keeps getting better, and it's going to continue to keep getting better. Resins are getting safer. The earliest resins were pretty toxic, and they're still not great. But when they're water washable resins, that's better generally than ones where you have to use a lot of isopropyl alcohol and all that kind of stuff. and the smell is getting less, and a lot of the new machines have got charcoal filters in them, charcoal air filters, so that helps to get rid of some of that smell and everything, but you still need to be sure to mitigate it. There's a lot of safety concerns and things you should look up if you're interested in resin printing. And like I said recently, sometimes it's just better to have a friend with a resin printer than to get into your own resin printing, because it does also become another hobby. It can. But yeah, it's something that it's gotten to the point where I'm being convinced that I might want to go that way. And it's a mixture of the technology getting better, and also there's just so much more stuff to print. Like before, it was like if I bought a resin printer or any kind of 3D printer, I was going to try to design my own stuff. Maybe some terrain, maybe some simple little doodads or whatever, bits, add-on things and stuff like that. And then I can, there you go, it's fine. Well, like that, there's so much stuff to print now that's not even a concern. Now it's all about, trying to figure out how to best mitigate the issues as far as the equipment and the machine, the smell and all that kind of stuff, and the safety. So yeah. I need a multi-part Nick Ramondo mini. Oh, that wouldn't be a bad idea. Any updated roadmap for Game 4? Are you considering a regional phased return, maybe? It wouldn't be regional phased return. No, we're looking at... We are looking at returning. We are definitely looking at it. We've been doing a bunch of kind of internal meetings and chat about that kind of stuff. We are hoping maybe sometime this summer to be able to kind of basically turn it back on. We're trying to decide what kind of changes need to be made. Both back end, front end, things like that. We've talked to some publishers here and there about some ideas that they may have. We were starting to talk to publishers before the coronavirus. We talked to a lot of publishers at the Reno trade show, the Game Manufacturers Association trade show that we went to, just like literally days before everything started getting shut down. And we were coming out of that show going, wow, this is really starting to take off. This is really great. And then all of a sudden, everything kind of died. So, but yeah, it's definitely, we're planning on bringing it back. So that's the trick. And like, we've got stuff kind of in motion, but I don't have a great date or anything like that on it yet. So me glances at cardboard box lined with aluminum foil and UV LED strips. I mean, yeah, it works certainly, but for me, I'm like I don't want the extra hobby of having to build the support stuff to, as it is, I'm going to have to do that. I'm going to have to figure out how to properly ventilate that room that I want to put it in down in the basement, the little tiny room. I want to do that stuff. But if I can also just be like, I'll just buy this UV curing thing and it's not that expensive, then I'm going to do that versus having to drill holes in a metal salad bowl. I would hurt myself, I suspect, trying to do that. But yeah. Resin wash stations are awesome. Deals with one of the major drawbacks of resin. Yeah, no, absolutely. I can understand that. I have a box lined with tinfoil and a nail curing lamp. Doubles as a hatch to protect me from the CIA. See, that's important. You're double dipping, which is a good idea. Do the printers take up a lot of space? A lot of them are not particularly large. The one I'm looking at is a bit larger, but this one is, I don't know, most of them are maybe about, I don't know, foot and a half across at max, and they're tall, maybe like generally, I don't know, 18 to 20, maybe 24 inches tall. I have the friend with the resin printer, thus I can get a bit done where it's helpful, but I can't go overboard. See, that's the thing too, yeah. More stuff I print, the more I want to design my own stuff, to be honest. That's why I'm taking it step by step, teaching myself to repose models at the moment. Yeah, I mean, if that's the direction you want to go, that's not a bad way from what it sounds like. I didn't even know that you could repose models that way. That's kind of cool. I've messed with Tinkercad. Tinkercad is a free 3D sculpting piece of software that's actually, it just runs in a browser. And I've messed with doing stuff with that, and it's a cool little, it's not crazy powerful, but they keep adding new features to it, and you can do some pretty surprising stuff with it, honestly. I've seen some pretty amazing things coming out of it, but it's a neat little system, Tinkercad, C-A-D. Yeah, so I've been working on some things that I want to do for terrain a little bit here and there, that just a little messing around here and there from time to time, and it's kind of cool. And again, because it's like a cloud thing, I can be on this PC and be like, and then mess around with it. Or I could be sitting on my laptop on the couch watching TV with my wife at some point or something, like after dinner, and then be like, and I can, it's nice. Have you ever had your local game store ask eBay prices for limited or out-of-print stuff? Mine put a $100 sticker on Terriana Palos and straight up just told me that's what the going rate for on eBay. It's a choice. I mean, some stores are doing it because, some stores are doing it because it's tough times. But also, a lot of stores are doing it because they know someone's going to buy that and then they're going to put it on eBay and sell it for $100 when it's a $35 model, let's say. So they're like, well, why don't we just do that? It depends on the store. I mean, I know several of my local stores are selling currently Pokemon stuff because it's so crazy popular right now, and you can only get so much of it. You can get it's very limited for some weird reason, have something to do with the manufacturer and probably COVID and blah blah blah. But anyway, I know at least both my local stores are selling Pokemon for market value, which is crazy, but that's what they're doing. So yeah, that's not a weird thing. It is what it is. I've had. Because my local store, the one that I like to go to, they still have Indominus in stock. I don't know if they're selling it for retail or a little over retail. I don't remember. I think they might even be selling it for retail. I haven't looked actually in a while, but yeah, there's definitely. It's because of the scalpers, frankly. A lot of them know you're coming in here to buy this model to flip it, and so they're like, well, then why don't we just do that? I mean, yeah, I can see it. My friends with the 3D printer are in the UK, which is not EU anymore, and that hurts. Yeah, that has become slightly difficult, certainly. I get that. CAD as computer-aided design. Yes, Tinkercad. I recreated the Rebel Grot vehicles out of Gorka Morka using it. When painted, they are near 100% identical. Oh, that's something. Yeah, I mean, you can get very detailed with it, and they've added, like I said, new features and things that made sculpting a little bit easier in certain situations. Like, it was very difficult to round corners on anything when it first launched. You had to use this weird hack to kind of go around it to do it, and now you can just like make a box or any shape and then just be like bevel and just start to slide the little slider, and then the edges all get rounded and things get smoother looking and more, and it's cool. So that's really great. I think marking up GW products might violate their agreement with GW. It depends on whether or not they have a direct agreement. That's also possibly true, but it depends on whether they have a direct agreement. There are stores out there that buy GW stuff from a distributor that's not GW. They end up paying a little bit more versus the deal that they get direct from GW. But yeah, many stores work directly with Games Workshop on Games Workshop stuff because you can get what was known as a contract through GW and then do it that way. And then you're right, you have certain things. There's certain prices you can't sell below a certain price, in store, and probably also markup beyond the retail is also probably an issue. But if you don't have a contract through them and you're just buying through your local like ACD or Blackhawk, is Blackhawk still around? Southern Hobby. There's a bunch of different game distributors, and then when you buy through them, you don't get the best price direct, but you're also getting some GW stuff with some, I don't know, board game stuff with some RPG stuff, and then that's enough to get your limit, so you're paid, there's no shipping. Free shipping is what I'm looking at. And then when you do that, then GW can't tell you anything, as far as I know, because you didn't buy it from them, you bought it from ACD or whoever, yeah. I really want to go to Adepticon when it's back. The only con I used to go to every year before COVID was Wonderfest in Louisville, Kentucky, a really cool hobby con. Yeah, I'm super looking forward to Adepticon. Gen Con moved their date, if you haven't heard. So Gen Con. Gen Con is the biggest tabletop gaming convention in America, 70,000 people usually. And they didn't have it last year, obviously, 2020. And then this year, they were planning on having it again in early August, like they do, and they just announced, I think it was last week, that they're sliding it back to September 16th through 19th. So that's troublesome a little bit for some people in different areas. It's school started, so you can't bring your kids as easily because they're in school and it's a thing, or you're an educator and you can't take the time off very well because it's the very beginning of the semester or whatever and all that kind of stuff. It's also, unfortunately, it seems to be on Yom Kippur. So that was, and again, I don't know this for sure. I'm sure they had very limited potentials for like we can slide it to this weekend or we can skip it again this year, which will possibly destroy the company. And because Indianapolis has got a lot of stuff going on, lots of different car racing junk and all kinds of other stuff. The issue that you're going to start to see towards the end of this year is conventions just being on top of each other. Origins moved to October, but so is Essen and so is this. And so all these conventions are going to be all lumped together towards the end of the year. And not only are you going to be basically like, I don't even know if well, first of all, I can't go to 2 conventions on the same day because they're in different states or whatever. Or it'll be a situation of like, I can't afford to go to multiple conventions and 2 weeks apart, or I don't have the time or the money or whatever. But also the vendors are going to be like, I can't go to 3 conventions in a month or 4 conventions in a month, So it's going to be a little weird. But anyway, a Gen Con did slip to middle of September. So I am planning on going. At this point, tentatively, I'm planning on going. I'm hoping to get the virus, like I said earlier, sometime in the next week or 2, at least, not the virus, I'm hoping to get the vaccine. I want to get that hopefully soon. So, but by mid-September, hopefully things will be better and all that kind of stuff. Adepticon still, obviously, Adepticon would literally be going on probably now, either now or next weekend. So, but yeah, definitely, they hopefully, knock on all the wood, everything should be, as far as at least Adepticon is concerned, everything should be better by next year, so that this upcoming, like a year from now, after missing 2 of them, we can finally go back. I'm very much looking forward to it. It's super cool. Been going since the 70s, hasn't it? Gen Con? Late 60s, actually. Yeah, I think it was, I think its first year was 1969, I believe. As the gap between the haves and the rest of us worsens, more luxury goods like GW products will fall increasingly out of the reach for most people. I think, honestly, that's one of the reasons why you're seeing so much interest in 3D printing. Because, like, literally for the price of, like I said, the one I want to buy is a little bigger, it's slightly fancier and stuff like that, but you can still get really decent prints out of a resin printer these days. It's $250. And for $250, you could buy, like, a GW box set game of in many situations. Not all of them, but in some. Like, if you wanted to play Necromunda Darkness Uprising or Uprising, whatever the hell that there was the original the original Necromunda game that came out back about 2017, and then there was it called Dark Uprising? I forget what the second game was, but it came with terrain and stuff like that. That was $290. That was a big honking box. Had 2 gangs in it and a lot of terrain. It was $290. You can get a resin printer for cheaper than that. Now, you can't print GW stuff. There was somebody here in the chat earlier who was like, oh, I will be able to just print this and this and this from GW. And this was before the video started. And I was like, no, that's piracy. You can't print something that's somebody else's IP that they don't want you to. If somebody sculpts something and sells you basically the rights to be able to print it via Patreon type of thing, My Mini Factory, etc., great, knock yourself out. But My Mini Factory and all those Patreons, they don't make Tau, they don't make Night Haunts, you know what I mean? Like, it's illegal to do that. Is it the same as hitting somebody with a baseball bat? No, certainly not. I mean, there are levels of illegality, but still, it's illegal to do that. But if you're playing generally more indie games anyway, then that this is the thing. This is the concern that people have a lot. Is like, well, if GW prices themselves out of the market and only certain people can play anymore, then what's going to happen? Well, then they're going to learn, probably, that all of a sudden a bunch of their audience has decided that they're going to play games that are less expensive, and that's kind of the way it works. So, they'll have to make those decisions when the time comes or whatever. But this is a big, huge avenue for people who are interested in playing games that maybe they find a little bit more interesting, that are a little bit more indie. Now they'll be able to use their own models and do all kinds of stuff, maybe some kit bashing and things like that. Like, it's not... People talk about monopoly with Games Workshop, which it's certainly not. Just because you make your own product and don't let other people make your product is not a monopoly. Coke doesn't have a monopoly on Coke because they don't let other people make Coke. You know what I mean? Like, that's not how that works. If Coke was the only soda in the world, then that's monopoly. That's a different story. But there are plenty of companies out there that sell miniatures. So, But it's just way easier all of a sudden now for someone to come up with a cool idea, sculpt a thing, I buy it, download it, print it, and I have it. There's no middleman, no distributor, no shipping. Now, this is not particularly great, obviously, for the 3D or for the friendly local game store, understandably. But that's kind of hopefully where maybe the rules come from, the hobby supplies. I can't 3D print paint, you know what I mean? I can't 3D print an X-Acto blade, that kind of stuff. So, you're going to see shifts in that situation, and you're still going to see people buying the normal stuff that they don't have to print, because not everyone's going to have printers, but more and more people will as time goes on. So, there's that. Which one do you want to buy? I'm hoping to get an Elegoo Saturn someday if the scalpers will eventually all die in a fire. GW and other high-end producers are also making very spindly and delicate miniatures at home that home printers cannot reproduce. I mean, they can. I have some pretty spindly 3D resin models that I've done recently. Did I post pictures of those? I don't have pictures of them on Instagram yet. That being said, they are more delicate than regular plastic. Resin is more delicate, especially when it gets skinnier, than regular plastic. That's totally true. I suspect that will also increase, or the technology will make that better and better over time. But right now, like a model that's real skinny in 3D printed resin versus in PVC plastic, ABS plastic, I forget exactly what type of plastic that, like GW and other companies like that with the injection molding. I forget the exact name of the plastic, polystyrene. Anyway, those are tougher than obviously, a little bit less brittle. So I get that is true. So let's see. There are not even the official proper models, though. They're all fan made and they all look off. Well, I mean, but that's the thing. That's the thing is that when you try to duplicate a model made by Games Workshop, it just doesn't usually look right. So that's why. But if you make your own cool models, these are not rip-offs of anything. I've had some people say, they kind of look like bloodletters. And I'm like, well, if you look at bloodletters next to these guys, you see the definite differences. But these are just really well-done models. I really like them, and that's cool. And, I don't know. I think it works pretty well. I tend to print 32mm models as they cost less than 50 cents a mini. I can see that. I have a 4K resolution screen and get stuff just as integrated as GW models. You'd be amazed what folks can print nowadays. Yeah, the quality, honestly, especially with 4Ks now, the more 4K printers, you're getting astounding amounts of detail. Really, 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 really well done. I can see local shops starting up print farms. Yeah, I mean, if the shop owner wants to go that direction, that's a potential too. I mean, there was a lot of talk about that when PDFs first started becoming a big thing, and there was a lot of a lot of designers out there who were like making. When 3rd edition D&D came out, there was a license you could get from Wizards of the Coast that said, I can make D20 stuff, which is what they called 3rd edition D20, kind of, where you could basically make like source books, add-on stuff, and you followed their rules a little bit, and for free then you can make stuff and sell it. And there was a lot of game stores that were like, well, if you buy that stuff online, then I'm getting cut out of the loop. So then there was talk about like, well, you should just then, sell printed versions of them. Like if someone comes in and says, hey, I bought this, can you print it and bind it for me? And then, but the game stores frankly don't want to become binderies. But I don't know, maybe some stores, I'm sure some stores already probably even have 3D printers, and you can go in there and say, hey, can I get this piece of terrain printed, this STL? And they'll be like, sure, boop, and then they do that. But a lot of stores, they don't want to start a new business model, so we'll see. It'll be interesting. My mate who 3D prints has just updated to a Saturn and has made it up with it. The stuff he's made me was with the Mars, and the quality was good. Yep, yeah, I did. I'm really good. Let's see here. FLGSs will or should start selling printer blocks and Patreon merchant accounts for the Patreon devs. I can see that. There are resins that you can add to regular resins, and they're very bendy and strong. Oh, okay, that's cool. Nice. They are clearly an homage to bloodletters. They may be an homage, but they're not the same. You know what I mean? Like, there are people out there who are pirating, they're like laser scanning, let's say, I don't know, Space Marine Terminators, and then selling that model so that you can just print your own Terminators. and that's illegal. That's piracy. If you make a model that is like in powered armor and whatever, and you're not copying directly any of the actual geometry of any current, known stuff from, say, like Games Workshop as an example, then it's not piracy. If you make dudes in power armor, it's not piracy. If you scan a 3D model, you scan a model that is currently a Games Workshop model so that you can sell it to people or give it away even, that's still piracy. That's the law. Also, everyone should read Cory Doctorow's Maker's novel, Creative Commons. Main plot point is 3D printers with DRM from Disney. Yeah, that's I did read that. It's been a while, so I should reread it. But yeah. OGL, Open Gaming License. Yep, that's what that was called. A lot of 3D model designers do sell licenses to print their stuff. I do with OpenForge, but do so pretty much with all the patrons. Yeah, a lot of them do sell special licenses, and that's how, like, when I was talking about Etsy recently, that model, the weird demony guy with all the holes in him and stuff like that, he is it's sculpted by a company called Rocket Pig, but Rocket Pig will sell you a license that says you can print this. You basically pay them more than you would just for the normal STL, and then you can print that model and sell that model on places like Etsy or locally at a game convention or maybe eBay. I don't know where else he sell that kind of stuff. My local public libraries have 3D printers. Yeah, a lot of them do. Yeah. Daryl says, I'd rather design my own, quote, Space Marines. And then that's cool. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just when people decide to start basically doing laser scanning on current GW models and then selling STLs of those models, that's piracy. And it's the same not just with GW, it's with anybody. But people don't generally scan, like, it's the expensive models they scan versus the less expensive models. Wouldn't it just be like a Xerox if you do it for personal use? No, because again, like, you're not supposed to, like, if they say in the back of the book, let's say for a game, they're like, here's the game sheet. It will say at the bottom of that page, you've been given permission to photocopy for personal use. But the rest of the book does not have that ability. You can't make a copy of the book that you bought legally, just so that you have a second copy of the book. That's legally not, that's piracy. I'm not telling you that it's right or wrong. I'm just telling you what the law is. Let's see here. Space Marines with powered armor were not invented by GW. No, they were not. Nor were Space Elves, nor any of the factions. They don't own the concepts. They own the specific expression of the concept. Yeah, exactly. If you want to make Space Elves and Space Orcs and all kinds of stuff like that, and you sculpt them and everything like that, knock yourself out. But you should not be scanning, like laser scanning, current models, model airplanes, model cars, anything made by somebody else. Make your own thing is the idea. Or pay somebody who made their own thing and who is selling that thing so that you can, get behind a Patreon, My Mini Factory, etc. Thingiverse. There's plenty of things on Thingiverse that are free, but very frequently you get what you pay for, so there's that too. I always really enjoy the names people use for 3D print files. Muscular interstellar jarheads, for example. Yeah. Again, and TurboDork, no, that's not that word I was trying to say. Thingiverse, I don't know why TurboDork came out. Thingiverse does an okay job trying to go through and root that stuff out, but there's still plenty that's missing. My friendly local game store just rents us use of his printer rather than require rights to sell other people's STLs. What do you think about 3D scanners? I'm later going to scan humans and objects with mine. Would scanning official miniatures be illegal? Yes. After all, you can scan a whole book with a regular scanner. Also illegal. You're not supposed to do that. That's technically piracy when you scan that stuff and then make a copy. That's just the legal stuff. GW comes down on Thingiverse from time to time, getting them to remove models that are too close. Yeah, I mean, getting into too close territory, that becomes a whole different legal thing. But when you're just like, I've scanned this, that's pretty obvious. But if you've designed something that looks very close, like very, very close, at that point it becomes difficult to say, well, you know, like what's very close, and that's a whole different thing altogether, which is fine. But just scanning a model that's already out there, yeah, that's not a thing. Loving a lot of 3D prints, reinterpreting old school out of print stuff. Yeah, I mean, like if you're going to sit and resculpt things, then that's not too bad, yeah. Thingiverse, did anyone see the 2 sets of Pariah terrain? No. Let's see here. The law you are mentioning is mostly exclusive to 3D scanned, whereas 3D models heavily based on GW models, and in some countries, even with icons with the double-headed eagle, are completely fine. I can't speak to what's going on in other countries because I don't know. I barely know the law in my own country, frankly. So there's that. But yeah, it's one of those situations where, like, as a person who is a creator, I don't like piracy. I'm just straight up, and I think it's wrong. So that's a big deal, frankly, for me. So if you're going to just be like, well, I don't want to pay that price, and, you know, you may agree with the price or may not, whatever, but you don't want to pay it, so you're going to go like, I'm just going to scan that and then give it to all my friends or print out as many as I want. That's piracy. I don't care what the laws in your country might say. It's wrong. The people who designed it aren't getting paid. And, you know, you may disagree with the price that they ask for, but that's the price they ask for. So copying somebody else's work directly like that is piracy. Or at the very least, let's just say it's wrong. Piracy is a legal term, I guess, but it's totally wrong. So that's just the way it works. You know, if you make something and you want other people to completely have it and put it out free in the world, that's what Thingiverse is for. Knock yourself out, do it. But you'll notice that most of the best sculpts aren't on Thingiverse. They're something that people, you know, would like to get paid for because it's the work that they did to make it happen. So that's my personal preference. It's the same thing as recasting models like busts and reselling them. Yeah, absolutely. You're just like, oh, I bought this thing. It's very cool. I'm going to make a cast of it and then sell it to other people. That's not cool. All right. Well, it's a little bit after 11. So thanks to everybody for coming by today on the here on the live stream, and we will see you again in another 2 weeks. Won't be going to a convention yet, so we won't be messing with the schedule at all. But yeah, like I said, I'm hoping eventually to be able to get the 3D printer that I want, and then I'll probably start talking a little bit more about that. But otherwise, I've been having a fun time printing the 3D printed stuff that I've been able to get from my friend Matt. And yeah, you'll probably see some more of that stuff coming up soon as well, maybe on Instagram, places like that. But we'll get together another 2 weeks and talk about some other stuff, and we'll see how it kind of goes. And we'll come up with a new subject and talk about, I don't know, I don't know if there's any new releases necessarily that are coming out that I can think of right off the top of my head, but I'll come up with something. So anyway, I want to thank everyone for coming by and chatting and hanging out, and we'll see you again hopefully in 2 weeks, and thanks for watching.